The North American carriers have a fairly large grasp on the aviation world. We've spent plenty of time covering American carriers and even some Mexican carriers, but other than a one-off Fifth Freedom flight, I've yet to cover a Canadian carrier. For that reason, welcome to Vancouver, Canada, where we get to try on the flagship business class of Air Canada on one of their longest flights out to Hong Kong. Use the timestamps below if you're looking for something specific. Now let's check out this product. The check-in curb in Vancouver has a section for US departures and then another that's split for domestic and other international departures. Inside was mostly self-check-in kiosks, but I am a big fan of the private check-in area against the side wall for Signature Class passengers and Star Alliance Priority members. Signature Class being what Air Canada calls their business class. From there, we head off to the security for the international gates. One of the perks of business class is that you get access to a priority security. I followed signs for it upstairs and ended up getting through in less than a minute. The only problem, I can't tell if it was the right one, because it dumped me out right in the domestic gates. No stress though, just meant a little walk to get where we need to be for the international gates here in Vancouver, and just to add insult to self-inflicted injury, we finally reached the Maple Leaf Lounge for the international gates, and it was immediately across from the proper security checkpoint. After getting a healthy dose of steps in, I welcome you to the International Maple Leaf Lounge here in Vancouver, available to all Star Alliance Gold and business class passengers on a same-day Star Alliance international flight. Most of this level is seating, but no matter where you sit, you can welcome in plenty of natural light, as there's incredible views of the ramp looking out towards the water and at this time of day, the arrivals into Vancouver. As a matter of fact, while sitting here, I was able to watch the 787 land from Seoul that was supposed to take us to Hong Kong. I got all these sweet shots of it landing and taxiing in, only for it to be swapped to another aircraft shortly after. I guess I'm to assume that there's some sort of small maintenance issue that came up with this aircraft that forced it to be grounded on arrival. Downstairs, food-wise, you'll find the buffet. It still appeared to have the breakfast items as we were in the late hours of the morning. The central counter with breads surrounded by the coffees and juices across from that. Then the chef prepared dishes in the other corner. If you turn around, you'll also see the bar, which was empty at this early hour. Not a lot of 10 a.m. vodka sodas, I guess. The last thing downstairs, in addition to the assorted seating areas, you'll find a private suite off to one end of the lounge, although it appeared to be occupied at this time. The second floor of the lounge didn't open until 11, but it's known as the Signature Suite. This area is available only to people holding a business class ticket and is similar to the likes of the Polaris Lounge's dining room or the American Airlines or British Airways flagship dining. The Signature Suite offers a sit-down dining option to people paying a little bit extra for a business class ticket. Now there is actually a buffet up here as well with a different spread of items from the downstairs area, featuring more antipasti and salad items. And just like downstairs, up here is also where you'll find the bar directly across from the buffet. If you are wanting a more traditional sit-down and order type of experience, you can also look through the menu and order things to be brought to your table, all at no additional cost included in your ticket. I was seated near a window, which was a great place to enjoy the view of airplanes going in and out on one side, and the art on the other side. Lastly, I visited the shower facilities in this lounge. It didn't appear that there was too many shower suites, so I'm not sure how long the wait can be, but at this hour there was no wait at all. The suite had a shower, toilet, and vanity, but was missing some of the more common amenities like dental kits and whatnot, possibly available on request, although I didn't test that out. And then it was finally time to head to my gate, which I did a little early admittedly because I wanted to walk around the Vancouver Airport. Vancouver Airport is known for its art and architecture with plenty of local touches like the assortment of totem poles. I mean, check out some of these areas. Nice little rivers and bridges. In the back, a little aquarium. The further you walk, you continue finding little touches like this. It really makes sense why Vancouver's airport won the award for Best North American Airport from 2010 until 2022, when it was finally surpassed by Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. So I guess the Pacific Northwest just got a thing for airports. Enough yapping and walking around, however. Here's our gate today, which houses the actual 787 that will take us to Hong Kong. Due to the aircraft swap, we were about 45 minutes delayed while we waited for this thing to arrive from Toronto. This thing, a 7-year-old 787 that has belonged to Air Canada for its entire lifespan and still rocking that old paint scheme. Air Canada boards by group, and as business class passengers we get to board with Group 1. So I queued for boarding, and after another short delay we began boarding, and I was finally able to see the flagship cabin of the Air Canada 787 business class. Welcome to what is known as the signature class cabin of Air Canada, complete with a 1-2-1 reverse herringbone setup where every seat is designed as equals, besides row 5, which is missing a window. My seat was 8A in the last row of the business class cabin, which I've started to prefer since it offers a little more privacy. As I get settled into my seat, allow us to adventure around a little bit. First off, there isn't a headrest, which seems a little strange, but makes a little more sense when you realize the gray seat is really just a cover slipped over the cushion and would make a headrest a bit tough. At least there's the Air Canada decorations on the top. There's an armrest along the side, which is nice just because of how high the countertop is. In front of that armrest is the control panel for the seat's moving parts, lights, and privacy settings. Along the window is the counter, and boy is it large. You can't use it during taxi, takeoff, and landing, but you are able to spread out in flight, which is great for this 14-hour journey. There's also a little cubby on the counter as well. Inside there you'll find the remote for the seatback screen along with charging ports and enough space to store whatever devices you might be charging. It's also the only enclosed storage in the seat. Above that is the windows. Some seats have 2, I only have 1, and until the jet bridge pulls away, my view is basically non-existent. Overhead, shout out to the aviation gods giving us the overhead air vents. Thanks to the brilliant design of the 787, we do see these more frequently than the A350. Glad to see them whenever possible though. The TV in front is a great size and currently is adorned with a screen for our destination. Then the tray table slides out from under that and can click into an intermediate setting in case you don't want it right on top of you. It's a nice tray table, and especially once folded out, is a great size as well, especially with the supplement of the countertop. Below that is the footrest, which was much wider than the typical reverse herringbone seats and also has some space below it for storage. Along the right side of the footwell is also a little literature pocket that I didn't use because I was convinced I would forget whatever I put in there. Then along the other side is the literature pocket that holds the safety card and other Air Canada content, and it's right next to a little storage basin that honestly couldn't really hold anything useful. On the aisle side, next to the seat, the armrest can be raised for extra privacy, but has to be lowered for taxi, takeoff, and landing. Underneath that, you'll also find another storage cubby, which was wet for some reason. Then, after sitting down, we were handed water bottles, and also got a nice glass of champagne, or sparkling wine in this case. Then the Air Canada headphones had great noise cancellation, although one of the ears noise cancelling didn't work. They did, however, have a convenient little hook under the counter to hang them on at least. We were also given slippers, which was great, but unfortunately, unlike other North American carriers, we do not get pajamas on a flight of this length. As for the bedding, we were given this comforter, which was plenty warm, and I do love the white color, but it must be a nightmare to keep them from showing stains and whatnot. We also got mattress pads. It's a great touch when airlines have these, and even better when you don't have to bug the crew to ask for them, even if it's not the thickest. Then the pillow, which was a good size, but a little weird that it was basically a square. Had a German of them. Still comfy, and allowed me to fold it in half and still be large enough. Then for the amenity kits. I was kind of surprised to see Acqua di Parma, which I've only seen on Etihad previously. But while there wasn't a ton of stuff in the pouch, the quality of the stuff that was in there was great. Now, for a super brief run through Air Canada's history so we can understand who this flagship carrier really is. The airline was actually founded in 1937 as Trans-Canada Airlines and didn't become Air Canada until a 1965 rebranding. After the rebranding, we saw the passenger count triple within the first 10 years. The 80s brought about their privatization, but also saw them becoming the first airline to have a fleet-wide no-smoking policy. Unfortunately, in the 90s, they hit a snag financially, which triggered them to bring in a new CEO. However, after a few years, they were brought to a profitable airline in 1994. Once that was done, the growth happened quick. First off, they were able to grow their route network with a main target of the US destinations. They added 30 routes to the United States as part of their biggest expansion. In 1997, to help their expansion and also grow their reputation on a worldwide level, they grouped together with a few airlines like United and Scandinavian and helped to found the Star Alliance, the first major global alliance. In the 2000s, they mostly spent time modernizing their fleet, with 747s being retired by the A340s, which then got retired by the 767s, which later got retired by the 777s, who got supplemented with these 787s as well. They also added other branches of the airline. Jazz, for example, is the name they assigned to their regional carrier brand after they acquired and consolidated smaller Canadian airlines in 2001. Jets, with a Z, is the name for their charter brand, which started in 2002 and is largely used for large groups or sports teams charters. Tango was a no-frills alternative to the main Air Canada. It was a way to compete with the growth of ultra-low-cost carriers. United tried a similar concept with TED, and Delta with Song. All of these failed, however, in the early 2000s. Rouge is the other Air Canada branch, and it's primarily for vacation destinations. Launched in 2012, it works a lot like Swiss and their branch Edelweiss. At this point, they have been profitable for quite a while, aside from COVID, where once we see the 2023 numbers, it's likely that they've returned to profit. As of a year ago, they were the 10th largest airline in the world by revenue, despite not ranking amongst the top airlines in passenger size or fleet size. As a matter of fact, they have 353 total aircraft, including their branches, which puts them behind United, Delta, American, Southwest, and Alaska Airlines, but ahead of all Mexican carriers if we're looking at it in terms of North America. This is all spread across their three main hubs, Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Air Canada is growing, it just appears to be doing so at a slower rate than its nearby carriers. We were presented the menus, which first off included the inserts for wine and spirits, as well as an insert with duty-free listings. Then for the food menu. Starting off, it had options for our 2 meals and a mid-flight snack. But first was a little about the team that puts this menu together. All of our food selection and non-alcoholic beverages are all on these pages. They had 1 page in English, 1 in French, and 1 in Cantonese. Here you can see the main course, a dinner service served right after departure, then a selection of light snacks for mid-flight, and lastly a breakfast to be served about an hour and a half before arrival to Hong Kong. Looking through the in-flight entertainment, North American carriers usually pack a good lineup just due to the wide range of destinations they fly to, and Air Canada was no exception, as you can see all the different categories that you can sort by. There really was quite a great selection of movies. You could sort by genres, but they also had all kinds of choices, both new releases and old classic hits. A little bit for everyone, really. The TV shows were great, mostly because of their partnership with streaming services like Apple TV, HBO Max, and Disney+. These things are spread out amongst the US carriers, but with Air Canada being the main long-haul carrier, they're able to wrap all of it into one. There were some excellent shows, I just wish they had full seasons. I did appreciate being able to add movies and TV shows to favorites, however, just since the selection is so large. Other than that, there was a great selection of music and games, a great selection of kids shows and movies that I still enjoy some of, loads of news from around the world, they even had menus for the flight on here, and a whole bunch of information, not just about our destination, but all their destinations, including the weather and all kinds of local sights to see in those cities. Helped me plan some itineraries for upcoming trips I've got. Now, Air Canada does offer Wi-Fi on their long-haul fleet. It can be purchased for an hour or for the full flight. A full flight of Wi-Fi is $40. Sounds high, but it's the same as United and Delta's long-haul flights at the moment. Not that that makes it right, but it does match the competition. I do know that Delta and United have plans to transition to free Wi-Fi, but I can't find if Air Canada has similar plans at this time at least. Once connected, it was not the fastest Wi-Fi in the world, I grant you, but was plenty for me to get work done and browse social media through the flight without issues. While looking through the entertainment, they also came through and passed out the immigration forms for Hong Kong. The hot towels being passed out signified the start of the dinner service. A little odd to be having a 2 p.m. dinner, but on these long flights, time really just feels like a construct or something. For starters, while they prepped the meal, a soft drink and warm nuts were a great way to keep me busy. I also got to enjoy some nice engraved silverware with the Air Canada logo on each piece. For my first course, I chose the Mediterranean meze platter, alongside a little side salad and some bread. Then, for the main course, I decided to go with the signature dish, which was a crispy Dijon chicken leg, which came with a garlic chili pasta and asparagus. I thought the chicken was actually cooked really well. I feel like airlines are slowly learning how to properly cook meat for airplane consumption, not just cooking it beyond recognition. I also chose the signature dessert as well, which was a dark chocolate fondant cake with some fresh fruit. With dinner wrapped up, it was time to prepare for bed. Using the little panel next to the counter, we can bring the seat fully flat. It's a fairly standard reverse herringbone seat, but we can see the seat cover much easier in this setup. So, we're going to hide it with the mattress pad. As we've said previously on this channel, it's not the thickest mattress pad in the world, but it helps to make the surface feel smoother. Then we can lay down the comforter. It's a nice length, I just found it to be a bit narrow. When tossing and turning, it would commonly fall off, waking me up and then have to be adjusted. Then that big square pillow. Like we said earlier, good size. Better if you fold it up or bunch it up a bit. But at least it's plenty big enough for that. Just had kind of a weird smell if I'm being honest. Personally, I really do like the look of the white bedding on airplanes. I just can't imagine needing to keep it clean and white. I do like the foot space available for people sleeping on their back in this setup. It's just a bit tight for side sleepers. To maximize comfort at least, we start by raising the armrest. It does make it a bit tighter, but it adds privacy. You also have the air vents, so you can really control your perfect temperature. You know I'm a big fan. And lastly, you can see the privacy when sleeping. No one else can see in, but people walking by can. With that though, I'm getting some sleep, and I'll see y'all soon. After about 9 hours, my alarm went off and I was able to get up and explore a bit. I would have loved to take a quick look at the Asian cities as we flew by them, but the windows were locked at full dim, so we instead just had a small glimpse of things through the purplish tint. I did want to look at the mid-flight snack options, and there was 2 choices. We could visit the snack basket at the front of the cabin on the bulkhead, or we could order something from the small mid-flight menu in the menu card we were passed out. I went with a bag of pretzels and an apple from the snack basket, and then not long after I ordered the noodles, which was more of an instant ramen sort of situation. I would have loved a bit of tea or coffee, but they weren't serving hot drinks when the seatbelt sign was on. And I'm not kidding when I say that the seatbelt sign must have been on for over 80% of this flight. I'm not sure what it is, but North American carriers are so insanely trigger happy with the seatbelt sign as compared to the rest of the world. Frustrating when you're trying to sleep, but they keep telling you to fasten your seatbelt in 3 languages every 30 minutes. The lavatories on most Air Canada aircraft have the maple leaf decoration on one wall, which I definitely appreciate as their own little touch along with the fun design on the floor. Other than that, there was some lotion as really the only amenity. But the best feature is just the fact that we get a window. Makes it feel a little bit more light and roomy than it would otherwise in this little box on an airplane. They eventually raised the window lock slightly. We couldn't get to full brightness, but we could at least get some light into the cabin. The main reason for this is because we were only a couple hours from Hong Kong and it was time for our final meal service, this time a breakfast serving. We had a few different options in the menu, but this meal was breakfast and I chose to go with the stir-fried noodles over the omelet, which came in a mushroom soy sauce with shrimp and yu choy, coupled with a seasonal fruit plate. Let's just say that I am more than ready to move on from North American produce and eat some good East Asian produce, some of the best in the world. All the fun was basically wrapped up now and it was time for descent into Hong Kong. Unfortunately, as one of the world's smoggiest cities, it may not be all that cloudy, but it was an eternal battle to try and see the city and get my camera to focus, which we did fly right past the city. I just almost missed it all. At this point, I've officially taken a long-haul flight on at least one carrier from each of North America's big 3 countries. I've spent time with American, Delta, and United in the United States, of which I feel that each airline serves a different demographic, so they each have their own strengths. In Mexico, we got to try Aeromexico's 787 last year, and it did have some great food, but was definitely a much smaller operation as compared to the US carriers. Like, not even close. But they definitely serve their demographic well, and I'm excited to try out their newer 787 business class product, hopefully within the next year. As far as Canada goes, I have flown Air Canada a few times actually, mostly in economy and never long haul, and it's only been on regional jets or 737s. Granted, that's their bread and butter, but I needed a bit more of a taste of the airline. I wanted to try their flagship product on one of their flagship routes. As a matter of fact, shortly before this flight, Air Canada actually announced a second daily flight between Vancouver and Hong Kong. This was my first taste of the Canadian hospitality on this kind of a flight, and I found it to be a very enjoyable flight. One of the biggest debates right now is whether North American or European carriers offer a better product. I'm sure there will be some all-out brawl about this in the comments, but here's what I'll say. In the last couple years, I've seen North American carriers evolve their products since COVID, and at this point, they have the better product. I would choose to fly with something like Polaris when flying long haul, as opposed to Lufthansa or British Airways. That being said, carriers like Lufthansa, Swiss, and British Airways have plans to evolve their business classes. The only issue is we've been hearing about it for a while and even seeing some sketches and renderings, but we've yet to see any of them really. Once they do finally surface, I might be able to reevaluate my opinions. You'll realize I didn't compare either region to the Asian carriers. And that's because nothing compares to the Asian carriers. It just feels like Asian carriers are light years ahead of everyone else. Most of them have top-tier cabins, and what some lack in cabins, they make up for in customer service. That's my 2 cents on the topic. Let me know yours down below, and be civil amongst each other. Honestly, one of my main motivations for flying with Air Canada is that by this point I've tried the US's top 3 carriers and I've flown Aeromexico, so I had to try the other North American carrier that competes transoceanic. The ground experience is really not too bad. I'm sure there's a more convenient priority security than what I went through, but I did appreciate the check-in area. I do love when airlines have private check-in areas for premium passengers, and Air Canada's check-in area in Vancouver with its decoration and plants was great. I just wish it were maybe a bit more private or secluded, but at least it was in its own corner. The lounge in Vancouver was incredible. I'd like to compare it to the Polaris Lounge of United, as it serves a similar purpose for international business class passengers. I was here early, so it wasn't all that crowded. I thought there were some great spaces, but the only thing I couldn't shake is that it felt just a little small. Didn't seem to affect us at this time, but most airports get the most crowded in the evenings, so hopefully it isn't too packed then. I did, however, really appreciate the signature suite dining. Similar to American Airlines flagship dining or Polaris dining rooms, it's a great place to eat and a nice benefit for the people who paid a bit extra for business class. On board, the reverse herringbone setup isn't exactly revolutionary, but I do like the colors they chose and the privacy that it offers. It looked a bit awkward when the seat sleeve began sliding off, but the seat colors along with the accents on the bulkheads was nice, simple, but nice. As for the soft product, I'd say it compares nicely to the standard of North American products with maybe a slightly better meal service. With the current place of things, I'd say that North American carriers trump the European carriers, but the Asian carriers still win the battle, like we mentioned earlier. The cost, however, is another big aspect I'd like to look at. I was starting from my home in San Francisco, so I could have flown United nonstop from there to Hong Kong on one of the multiple daily flights. In business class, that would have cost me about $4,000 to $5,000 one way. Instead, I chose to fly Air Canada through Vancouver, and it cost me about $2,500. This seemed to be consistent with the other routes to Asia as well, so I guess Air Canada is a great way to save some money on these transoceanic routes, and for a very comparable product. Obviously, the ability to fly nonstop from San Francisco to roughly 15 cities in Asia is incredibly convenient. But I'll always side with the cheaper deal, and it seems like the majority of the time, Air Canada has that cheaper deal. I will say that I got plenty of comments from Canadians saying that they avoid Air Canada like the plague, and that their customer service is horrendous. And maybe I got lucky today, but other than the departure delay due to switching aircraft, I didn't see any issues on that front. So personally, I'd definitely find myself on Air Canada again, and might be doing that later this year on Air Canada's flight number 1, wink wink. But let me know your thoughts on Air Canada and your experiences with it over the years. Until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.